Good morning, everyone. Again, good afternoon, wherever you're joining us at the second session of
Kenapa,
the
Bi?
Global Youth Leadership Program,
Saya
Women's
pagi
Rights
matkul dari
and
jam
Gender
7, Bi. Sampai
Equality.
sore saya besok tuh. Full.
Okay. For the purposes of recording, I'll start again if you don't mind. We want to make sure that we have a clean recording as these will be later published in our YouTube channel. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're joining us at the Jonas Emeritus Foundation's Global Youth Leadership Program 2025. We are currently in session 2, Women's Rights and Gender Equality. And our theme for this month is Women's Rights and Gender Equality, as March is around the corner with the upcoming UN Commission on the Status of Women, United Nations, one of the biggest platforms that will host thousands of human rights advocates from all around the world, as there will be both virtual and in-person events at the United Nations and nearby venues. We will see member states convening at UN discussing the most pressing issues in regards to women's rights, adopt resolutions, release reports on the latest status of women and girls in all spheres of civil, political, economic, social life across the globe. So we will be exploring these platforms more in detail during the workshop session of today's event as well. So before I continue with my initial reflections on the theme and introduce our speakers for today, I'll turn to Mehmet Kılıç for his reflections this morning.
Thank you so much, Cemre. Hello and greetings to everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to the second session of the Global Youth Leadership Program 2025. Really and honestly, we are thrilled to have such a dynamic and passionate group of youth leaders from 16 different countries convened here today with us and all committed to fostering positive change in our world. This interactive session is particularly special. It is special because we have the honor of learning from two remarkable experts who have made significant strides in promoting women's empowerment, gender equality, and human rights at both local and global levels. So their insights and experiences will inspire and empower each of us to drive change in our communities. As many of you know, the JWF has been actively engaged with the UN Department of Global Communications, playing a vital role in advancing women's empowerment and youth empowerment. Through different various capacity building programs and workshops, we mobilize youth leaders and civil society organizations worldwide to create impactful initiatives, and this is one of them. In conjunction with the upcoming Commission on the Status of Women 69th session, as Cemre mentioned earlier, we will be organizing a series of panel discussions in collaboration with 16 global partners from 7 countries. And this collaboration will open up vibrant discussions on issues that matter not just at the United Nations, but also within our societies. So I encourage all of you to listen attentively and engage with our speakers today, as the topics we explore are not only crucial for our time, but will shape the future we aspire to create. So I thank you so much, and it's over to you, Cemre.
Thank you. Thank you so much for these reflections, Mehmet. And I would like to continue with some more background on the current status that we're living in, because yesterday Freedom House, one of the most credible human rights organizations acknowledged worldwide, they launched their annual report, Freedom in the World, and I highly encourage our members, participants to read it. I'll share the link later in the chat, but they noted that global freedom declined for the 19th consecutive year in 2024. And we are still hundreds of years away from turning the goal of gender equality into a reality. And we observe that new forms of risks are emerging with the unprecedented rate of advanced technologies, artificial intelligence, ill nature of our media ecosystem, where disinformation has a much greater rate to spread and expand. So to start off any discussion regarding women's rights and empowerment, I think we must really acknowledge where we are standing And we are definitely in an uphill advocacy struggle to safeguard fundamental rights of women and girls, and ensuring that gender identities of all individuals are respected is getting more and more challenging. But on the other side of this negative coin, I think civil society movements are more resilient than ever. And yesterday at the Journalists and Writers Foundation, we organized a virtual screening of youth voices for peace and interfaith dialogue, as we received many powerful messages, about 30 messages from young individuals standing tall from the most distressed countries. So I was quite inspired by their motivation to ensure peace and security for everyone. So despite these setbacks, more leaders, women leaders, are acknowledged as peacemakers, receiving Nobel Prizes, making history by various breakthroughs. And I see more and more he for she, as we have in the room as well, male champions of women's empowerment, knowing that women's rights are human rights for all. So we must have this wind really at our back, multiply the good practices of civil society leaders working towards women's rights, and be a part of global movements, exciting partnerships, as we will hear from our speakers as well, peaceful advocacy actions to make sure that we are on the right track, progressing, even though the pace may be slowed down at some times. So wrapping up my initial reflections on the theme today, I must say that we have two distinguished speakers who have inspiring career journeys with more to achieve through the platforms that they thrive. And in the first part of our session today, we will hear from Jelena Comella and Renata Coach Alvarenga. Then we'll dive into an interactive session where the floor will be open for our participants to engage with their feedbacks, observations, or questions for our expert speakers. So Jelena, Renata, welcome on board. We are really thrilled to have you to unfold this month's theme, as you're both champions of women's rights. I'm sure this will be a very fruitful session. And to give you a brief background on the Global Youth Leadership Program, this is JWF's one of the latest annual programs launched, convening young professionals from diverse backgrounds, including participants from 16 different countries. And our mission here is really to build a sustainable, prolonged network of young leaders, global leaders, emerging, potentially resourced young individuals committed to positive change through the implementation of sustainable development goals. So the floor will be first Jelena Comellas. She is currently serving as a member of the CEDAW, UN's Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. Ms. Comella is a senior consultant with 25 years of experience in international relations and the United Nations system. So this is a great chance to listen to her remarks and come up with questions. Throughout her career, Ms. Comella has been true to her feminist principles by promoting women's rights, strengthening women's leadership, and supporting the work of activists in the fields of mass atrocities, prevention, and gender justice. She was formerly appointed as the Deputy Permanent Representative of Andorra to the UN in 2022 and served as the Chief of Mission to Canada and the United States from 2001 to 2007. Upon leaving her diplomatic career, Ms. Comella shifted to transfer her knowledge and skills to the service of activism. She was a consultant for the Center for Women's Global Leadership and Women's Empowerment Development Organization, engaged with the Support Office of the Global Action Against Mass Atrocity Crimes, and she is currently serving as a faculty member of the United Nations Institute for Training and Research. Well, Jelena, over to you. You have a spanning expertise from very different disciplines, merging your mission to advocate for women's rights, ensuring that international intergovernmental systems are working in favor of survivors of political, civil, cultural, religious violence all over the globe. So we're excited to hear your remarks. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Cemre, is an honor to be part of this landmark event of the Journalists and Writers Foundation. I wanted to to extend a warm gratitude to Mehmet and to you, Cemre, for always giving me the opportunity to interact with your network, to be part of your very important cause. And as you say it, now, we always say now more than ever, unfortunately, but I hope that one day we don't have to say it again. But you painted the landscape. The landscape is not looking good, not only for freedom. And if I may say, Cemre, to link it to your introduction, it is not surprisingly so that civic space is shrinking, that freedom is on the decline. Why? Because gender inequality is on the rise and violations of women's rights are on the rise. So that's why I commend you and Mehmet to organize, not because Women's International Day is around the corner, but we cannot forget that what is at the core of sustainable development and peace and security is gender equality. So thank you again for giving me this opportunity. I'm not going to repeat the dark outlook that it's coming up for gender equality. And I will be sending you my script, Cemre, so you can share it, not for attribution or distribution to the participants. I put some links. And one of the links that I added was on the report on progress on Sustainable Development Goals, the Gender Snapshot 2024. And as you know, Sustainable Development 5, mainly to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. We are not in track, not even close to be on track to achieve SDG 5 by 2030. So according to the Gender Snapshot 2024, we've seen that 1 in every 8 women and girls age of 15 to 49 were subjected to sexual and or physical violence by an intimate partner in the previous year. This is a huge percentage. We also show that progress in women's political participation, while there has been, we need to acknowledge this, while there has been a very modest improvement, it remains slow. As of January 1st, 2024, women held not even 27% of seats in national parliaments worldwide, marking a modest increase of 4.6 percentage points since 2015. In local governments, the participation was higher at 35.5% as of January 2023. So that's not bad, right? And you guys know that these international standards and norms, they need to trickle down at the local. So we're counting on youth leaders. I'm out of the youth bracket. It's been quite a while. So you are the future to implement these international standards at the local level. And it's very important to see that we're getting close to 50-50 to parity at the local government level, where implementation has to take place. However, if we look at management positions in 2022, there was quite a notable decrease of 28.5%. So in management positions, or what I also call leadership positions, you only have 27.5% of female in management positions in 2022. So as you can see, we are not even close to the parity. And this trickles down to exacerbate women's rights discrimination and gender inequality. Now, As I have the honor to sit one of the 23 members of the CEDAW committee. The CEDAW committee is the treaty body, the monitoring committee of 23 independent experts. We monitor the application, the effective implementation of the provisions of the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination against Women, or CEDAW. So I need to do, if I may, Mehmet and Cemre, I need to do a little bit of publicity about CEDAW and the CEDAW committee. Because as of today, CEDAW is the only human rights instrument to promote gender equality. There are other legal and normative frameworks, such as the Women, Peace and Security Agenda at the UN Security Council, that places gender equality at the core. You also have the Rome Statute with its gender provisions that has it's bridging the gap for accountability for conflict-related sexual and gender-based crimes. However, in terms of gender equality, the landmark human rights instrument is the CEDAW Convention. The CEDAW Convention is almost universally ratified, 189 state parties out of the 193 member states. This is my appeal for those countries who have yet to ratify it and join the club. It is a very nice club to be in. So you have and I'm not going to walk you through all the articles, of course, but the convention is articulated in three main areas, right? To equip member states to create substantive equality, to fight discrimination, and then, of course, by ratifying the convention, you have the state's obligation to eliminate gender-based violence, gender-based discrimination, and all forms of discrimination against women. Part 1 of the convention gives you the definitions and the measures to eliminate discrimination against women, right? And Article 1 defines what do we mean by discrimination against women. And I really invite you to read it over. Article 2 gives the legally binding obligation of state parties to adopt appropriate legislative and other measures, including sanctions when appropriate, to prohibiting all types of discrimination against women. It also calls for the repeal of national legislations that they are discriminatory. Article 5 is one, I would say, of the most cross-cutting and most challenging to be implemented. Why? Because it goes to the root of gender inequality, which basically is social stereotypes, social norms that they impede gender equality, and that they come, unfortunately, with harmful practices against women and girls. So a very important article. Part 2, you have articles that they equip state parties to eliminate discrimination, and that's very important for you guys who are leaders in the political and public life. And I will come to this, especially in the Q&A in our discussion, because we are not doing very well in terms of having female leadership in the public life. And unfortunately, such as journalists and writers, women politicians, or women who want to seek office, they are threatened and also they are intimidated. So another aspect to consider with promoting gender equality, that you need to establish norms and legislations and quotas that promote the participation of women in the public life, but you also need to make sure that you eliminate any types of harmful practices, discrimination, and intimidation. Part 3, very important, obviously, because it ensures equality in education. And education and training, and it's twofold. Not only you promote girls and women to have education in careers that doesn't matter the gender, obviously, but then it also ensures that the curricula at school and at universities are inclusive and promote women's rights and gender equality. Part 4, they're all important, obviously, equality between men and women before the law, especially in marriage and family relations. Part 5 establishes the committee, and I'll come back to the committee. And part 6 is about the provisions to implement the CEDAW Convention. So, as I was saying, I'm very honored to have started my mandate until I have 4 years, and I'm one of the 23 members of this monitoring, this what we call in the jargon, treaty body. Right? So we monitor through a dialogue, constructive dialogue. We go article by article, and we measure and we monitor the implementation level to eliminate all forms of discrimination against women. That's a main part of our job. Another part that is very important and that is less known is that the committee drafts soft law or what we call general recommendations. Other treaty bodies call them general observations. We might come back to general observations, but in the CEDAW committee, we call them GRs, general recommendations. These general recommendations, to be very simplistic, they're a compilation of the interpretation of the convention articles and other legal and normative frameworks to equip state parties to eliminate a specific aspect of discrimination against women. For example, gender-based violence. Gender-based violence, it is to be understood as discrimination against women. You will not see gender-based violence written in the convention, but it is understood that gender-based violence is a product of discrimination against women. Now, in 2017, the CEDAW committee updated General Recommendation 19 into General Recommendation 35, which equips member state parties to fight gender-based violence against women. And what is good about it is that it goes to the core of the question, reminding that gender-based violence against women is rooted in the unequal and unjust gender power dynamics. Gender-based violence against women, and I quote, is to be rooted in gender-related factors such as the ideology of men's entitlement and privilege over women, social norms regarding masculinity, the need to assert male control over power roles, or prevent, discourage, or punish what is considered to be unacceptable behavior. So, very important definition, because it goes to the root causes of what causes gender-based violence. And unfortunately, we are not on track of eliminating gender-based violence against women, but since the pandemic, and you may remember that the Secretary General called the rise of domestic violence the shadow pandemic. So we are unfortunately seeing not only that we are not reducing it, but it has increased. Now, what might be also relevant for this group is General Recommendation 40, which was adopted by the committee last October, and it equips state parties to accomplish equal and inclusive representation of women in decision-making systems. It lays out 7 pillars, of which one focuses on the effective youth leadership conditioned by parity. Parity means 50-50 and other intersectionality and the inclusion of women in the diversity in decision making. So these two aspects, I wanted to bring them to your attention because they do speak directly to you. Now, as we speak, and the second week of February during our sessions, we held an open dialogue, and you are all invited. Of course, it is a consultative process. We held the first open dialogue on the drafting of General Recommendation 41. So there is a new general recommendation on the making. Ms. Reddock and Ms. Rana are the members of the CEDAW committee who are co-chairing this process. And General Recommendation 41 will be a game changer, in my opinion, because it aims at fighting gender stereotypes, especially as they can lead to gender-based violence, harmful practices, and they exacerbate discrimination, for example, by impeding women to choose certain careers. So that's the main instrument that helps us get closer to the targets and indicators set forth by Sustainable Development 5. I don't know if I have a little bit of time. I was asked to give very briefly which aspects of gender equality I've been more active. Cemre, do I have time to go very quickly on this?
I would, if possible, we can come back to this in the Q&A
Yes,
session,
let's come
if
back.
you don't mind.
Yes. Let's come back to this. I will tell you why it is important to support women's leadership, especially young women's leadership, why it is important to ensure that you have a gender lens in the normative and standard setting, and then why it is important to have gender equality in universities and school curricula. So I'll come back to this in the Q&A. And sorry that I got carried away with the CEDAW convention and the CEDAW committee. Over to you, Cemre. Thank you.
No, it's our privilege to have a member with us so that we can learn from the first-hand experiences and the source of the committee. Thank you so much. I appreciate your presence today, as always. So I will definitely come back to Jelena with some more follow-up questions, and would love to hear her reflections on the upcoming elections that will happen next year to elect the next Secretary General of the United Nations as well. So now we will be hearing from Renata, Coach Alvarenga. She's originally from Brazil and leading a voice for gender equality and youth leadership in the global climate movement, having been involved in climate justice spaces for the past decade. She founded the youth-led and Brazil-led organization Empodera Clima at 22 years old, advocating for girls' education and climate action in the global south. Renata was the first Brazilian youth to speak at the UN Commission on the Status of Women, CSW 65 opening session. That same year, she was also nominated by Malala Yousafzai as a young leader to attend the UN COP26. She's a part of the 2022 class of environmental educators, 30 under 30, and she has been on the boards of various international organizations, including UN Women, the UN Girls Education Initiative, the World Economic Forum, Vital Voices, Bloomberg, and the New York Times. Renata has professional experience in global climate policy and diplomacy, having worked at the British Mission in Brazil and the United Nations Youth Office, including World Bank headquarters as well. She has a spanning experience in women's rights advocacy and girls' empowerment. Renata graduated with a master's in public policy from Harvard University. So, Renata, again, welcome on board. It's an honor to have you as well as one of our speakers today. And We were thrilled to invite you with your hat of NGO CSW Global Youth Fellow too. And I really look forward to receiving your reflections, to share your advices, strategies for youth advocates to be meaningfully active in diplomacy platforms, because we have very highly potential emerging leaders like yourself to follow up your track and pathway. So over to you.
Thank you so much. Can you all hear me okay? It's good. Good audio?
Yes, everything is fine.
Okay. Perfect. Perfect. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me to the Journalists and Writers Foundation, the wonderful work that you do. And thank you, Jelena. You gave such a great overview of CSW and CEDAW and all of these so important, but so, I think, difficult negotiations too. I think having been in the youth space, it's often, I think, part of the work, or at least half of the work has been just understanding how everything works, right? Both in the women and gender equality space, but also in the climate space, as you have seen from my bio. And so my work is actually intersecting those two topics very closely, because since I was 17, 18, starting college, studying international relations, I understood that we have two big issues, right? One is gender inequality that we've worked on for so many years, but still are not nearly enough where we need to be. And of course, we have a rapidly approaching challenge, which is climate change, which is, I think, something we've been discussing for many decades, but at the same time, it's one of those challenges that is getting increasingly intensified and just more intense, more rapid, and just worse. I mean, I'm from the south of Brazil, from Porto Alegre. It's the city that it's a state that borders Argentina, Uruguay. So it's a very rainy city, and I grew up, having to face floods and things like that. And last year, in May 2024, we actually had the biggest flood in history that we've ever had, one of the biggest climate disasters in Brazil. Our airport was fully flooded and closed for 8 to 9 months. We couldn't leave the city. And so I think, to me, that solidified the importance of dealing with these global issues, but not only, dealing with climate change, which I'm here to talk more about gender, but to give you the context of how these global crises are exacerbating inequalities, including gender inequality. And so an anecdote that I saw from what happened in my hometown was really in the shelters, people that had to go to shelters because they lost their homes because of the flooding. Women were a lot more vulnerable in those spaces, and actually were victims too of sexual harassment, sexual abuse. And the state government and city government of my home state had to create urgent shelters for children and women, because they were not safe, even in that situation of extreme vulnerability, losing their homes, losing everything they've worked so hard to earn in their lives. And so I think, to me, that makes it so clear as one of the examples that frames the inequality fight, right? That's why CSW happening soon is very important. I'm very happy to be one of the NGO CSW New York Global Youth Fellows. There's 15 of us working on a range of different issues. Obviously, I'm very focused on the sustainability aspect and climate aspect, especially because we also have, besides CSW and Beijing Plus 30 and this entire, I would say, landmark year, the 30 years of the Beijing platform, of the gender equality discussions we're having at the global level. We're also having COP30, which is the UN climate conference that happens every year, has been happening for the past 30 years. But this year is a special one, not only because it's the number 30, but also it's 10 years since the world adopted the Paris Agreement on climate change, which is the most important agreement we have for climate action. So 10 years, so there's a lot to be reviewed, including gender. I could answer questions later about how the gender discussions happen in the negotiation space for climate as well, and vice versa, right? How the environmental negotiations or aspects happen at CSW at the gender spaces, because I'm very involved in both. But I do think it's just, and of course, COP30 is also in Brazil. It's in my home country. In the past few years, it has been in places that have been hard to reach for a lot of Latin Americans, for a lot of Global South people. Not every year, but in some years. We recently had a COP in Africa, in Egypt. So overall, it's hard to access these spaces, even geographically. I don't know where everyone is based, but I know that getting to New York, attending a UN event is a big challenge. I think I've been successful at that because of a few reasons that helped me, besides, being able to even speak English, which is the reality of 1% of Brazilians. Over 200 million people, 1% speak fluent English. And so I think that's one barrier that needs to be closed and reached. And even in my NGO at Empoderra Clima, it literally started with the translation of content. We understood that we can talk all we want about gender and climate at COP, at CSW, at the UN, but it's almost, I mean, sometimes there's translation, of course, to the official UN languages, but in general, indigenous peoples, young women who only speak maybe Portuguese or a different language, they're not able to access that true language. So a lot of the work that I've done in the last 6 years leading my NGO, which is youth-led, has volunteers from all over the country, all over Latin America, has been that effort of translating content. So language-wise, but also translating the language too, like in terms of accessibility, right? These terms are so difficult and so far from reality, far from the local communities, from people who are doing the work, especially if we think of women environmental defenders, earth guardians, indigenous women that are taking the lead, but even though they're doing all the hard work, they're not, their activism and power is not reflected at the global level because of all these barriers. So that's a little bit of an introduction there. I know we'll have time for the Q&A, but I was asked to talk a bit more about my journey, which I think I've done. And then in terms of also maybe some advices and strategies and things that you could consider being in the youth space, or maybe not even the youth space, just being a young professional. Because I do think it's important, right? I mean, I've been doing this for many years now, since I was 17, 18. So now I'm reaching the end of that youth ladder. But at the same time, I do feel the disparity there still, even at the UN, people, I think the majority, if I don't remember the data now, but I know that the average age of people that are even entry level or maybe mid-career, but I would say more entry level at the UN is like around 40 years old. So it's even hard to get people that are under 30, under 40 to even join these spaces. And the reason that's important as well is so we can bring fresh ideas, bold ideas, more creative ideas. I know that there's so many young people that are qualified, have master's degrees, undergrad degrees, so much knowledge, indigenous knowledge, lived experiences, but are not able to find the space to share that. So one thing that has been helpful for me is to find a mentor and make connections as well. So networking events, I found in my adult life that networking is everything. And so, getting into spaces, introducing yourself to people helps a lot to be able to share the work that you do, not be afraid of that. I know it can be scary. And also not being afraid of being yourself. I know for me, I'm quite bubbly and I like speaking loudly and I like I have that energy, which maybe is not the energy that's a lot of, I don't know, boardrooms of companies will bring. But I think there's a special tone to that, and that's your superpower sometimes, right? And like Greta Thunberg that everyone talks about, and her way of speaking that's very emphatic and powerful in that way and very strong, caught people's eyes, caught people's attentions. And so I think I deeply believe, especially working with so many young people that are amazingly talented, but sometimes they're just missing that one opportunity. There's definitely so much power in not only making these connections, introducing yourself. If you admire someone deeply, try to reach out to them. A lot of times people will be more than happy to have a conversation with you, a coffee chat. One example of that is I've always admired Cristiana Figueres, who's a Costa Rican diplomat, and she was actually the executive secretary of UN climate change when the Paris Agreement was adopted. So she's considered a big architect of the Paris Agreement, this Latin American woman who's super, super interesting, fascinating person. And she's highly regarded all over the world. And, I've always looked up to her. And over the years, I've found myself in similar spaces to her, to the point that last year she hosted a few retreats on climate and inner reflection and self-reflection. And she invited global leaders on climate from all over the world. And I was lucky enough to attend that, speak to her, tell her how much I admired her. So I think those full circle moments really do happen. And it's just a matter of putting yourself out there, using the resources that you do have, getting resources from spaces that you can. We can talk more about that too, about opportunities. But I was always someone that chased these opportunities because the hometown I'm from is not super accessible in terms of finding a lot of job opportunities that are global and things like that. And I know it's easy to feel stuck in that way. So that would be my advice if you dream of getting to a UN space or speaking on stage or just having a global career, starting as a youth activist, advocate. I think there's a lot of power in seeking these opportunities. Sometimes we don't try, but the reality is if we don't try, we never know. And so throughout my career and my youth activism years, I've applied to many of these fully funded opportunities to finally try to get into the right spaces and find my niche, which was the gender and climate niche. And now I'm getting more into women's climate resilience for disaster, especially with what happened in my home state. But I think overall the message is don't wait until you're an expert and to start to get involved, right? Because that can take a long time for people to even see you that way or respect you that, especially if you're a young woman or if you're not fluent in English, things like that. There's credibility things and just difficulties that we have because of the patriarchy, because of the systemic inequalities that we face. But putting yourself out there really helps. And yeah, start to get into the spaces that you'd like to participate in. For CSW, I'm excited to go this year. I'll say it's the first time I'm more involved into the negotiations itself and involved in the young feminist conversations around it. But I have attended, as you saw in my bio, I got to speak. I was virtually because it was still pandemic, but on stage next to the Secretary General and speak about young women's priorities, which was beautiful. And that came as a result from being super involved in Zoom webinars and these kind of articulations and conversations with UN Women, UN Women Regional Office, UN Women Brazil. And so it really paid off. They invited me after seeing, you're doing this hard work. So of course, it's not only meritocracy, there's very deep inequalities in accessing these spaces. And I know that as a Brazilian in a place that's in a country that's highly unequal, but at the same time, there's power in getting out there and making your work known to the world. I think I've talked for maybe 10 minutes already, and I know we have the Q&A still. So perhaps I'll stop there, but my main point is just to inspire you all to give it a try. I know there's imposter syndrome. I know there's insecurities that we all have in this space, again, especially as women. And when people are, and we don't see perhaps people from our regions or our countries taking those powers and taking those spaces, but knowing that that's possible, and not only possible, but very important. I mean, I always say, we had more women leading the climate discussions, the sustainable development discussions, we probably would be more advanced than we are today. We would have treated things with more empathy, more kindness, more urgency. And so there's so much power in bringing not only young women, allies, everyone needs to talk about gender equality. And so I hope that this can inspire you to take action. I hope I can meet some of you, maybe at CSW or at COP30 in Brazil. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Renata. That was fantastic, and you definitely have the energy of Global South women on you. We were delighted, we were energized, and I think you will be present in the CSW too. So let's make sure that you, me, Jelena, Mehmet, we all gather for a coffee coming up soon. Well, thank you so much. I've taken many notes, but in the meantime, I highly, highly appreciate participants to take the floor. If you can please use the raise hand button, I'll make sure that you're joining us here in the speakers section. And one of the main strategies I think Renata shared is pushing your safe boundary zones, exiting your bubble to make sure that you take an advantage of such platforms to practice your speaking skills, to practice sharing your thoughts in a diplomatic way. And this is the mission of this platform as well. So please do not be shy. No question is a stupid question. I love this sentence. No question is a nonsense, referring to a nonsense content. So please take an opportunity. In the meantime, though, I'll start filling the time up while our participants are getting their questions and feedbacks hopefully ready. So Jelena, I'll come back to you because I want to ask your opinions on the upcoming elections as well. And I think this is a good question for you to link your remaining takeaways to the gender lens of the importance that we have feminist leaders navigating these big international intergovernmental organizations. So for our participants also to know, on coming up next year in 2026, there will be elections at the United Nations, a historical one, because we have a really chance to turn the history around, really have the talk walking on these premises, because this is a chance to elect a feminist women leader. I hope we will have very highly qualified candidates. So Jelena, first to you, and then I want to take Renata's opinion on this as well. What's the importance of having a woman expert leading the United Nations in this time of conflicts hitting its maximum level?
Thank you. Well, I would say that it's always important to have a female leader, no matter the environment, if I may. And Renata, in a way, she alluded to this. Look at my time when I was deputy permanent representative, and I'm not going to say the year because then you'll know my age. But we were not even 10. There were even maybe 10 or 11 women ambassadors, right? Now there are 80. Now I was very pleased to find out that there are like 80 plus female DPRs. Look, it is important, and Renata said it in, I would say, more passionate words. If multilateralism and international law has always been lacking the gender lens. Why? Because, first of all, women's rights and issues affecting to women were considered less important than other issues. But also it's because women were not at the table. Right? Mm-hmm. That's why it is important to have women at the table. And feminist women, feminist men, but feminist women at the table. You know it. I see around my screen, and some names I can recognize the area, some others no. But in whether it's Western or not Western societies, women are key agents of transformation. In some communities, they need to be at the table because they speak for their children, the elderly, because they are the ones who have that multiplier effect. So especially in peace and mediation, if you don't have the women at the table, you are forgetting like more than half of the population's needs. Same with the UN, right? We've seen the evolution of international law and this world order that it's becoming, and unfortunately now we're going backwards, but with the Rome Statute adoption, the Beijing Declaration, and Platform for Action, which is not legally binding, but it's a blueprint, the UN Security Council 1325, it places at the core that it's like multilateralism and this world order, this international law system, has to have a gender lens, has to mainstream gender, and has to have effective and meaningful participation of women in leadership positions. So that's why, Cemre, I hope you're not going to be disappointed. I hope it's going to be a woman. It's well overdue. Just for being, not just for being just. Don't tell me that there are not qualified women out there. Of course there are qualified women out there. But Renata pointed out a crucial point, which is like these spaces are not open to women, even less women of color and women who come from non-English speaking countries, right? So, Cemre, I just hope that next year we can all celebrate and have a top feminist female leader running the UN and make sure that gender equality is further mainstream. Look, I also want to take that little parenthesis to commend the work of the Secretary General in pushing gender equality and women's rights, right? I mean, he has done quite a lot. So back to you, Cemre, and that's what I think. Now, whether we'll be disappointed or not, I don't know. I hope we won't.
Well, I want to add that I've never seen this level of an increasing and growing global momentum to push this aspiration into reality. So my hopes are really high. I think civil society is really on the front this time to make sure that we achieve this target. I'll turn to Renata for her brief reflections on this question, then I'll give the floor to our participant. Please, Renata.
Sounds good. I mean, Jelena said everything that I think it is well overdue for sure. I mean, the UN has been around for 70 plus years, and come on, we've never had a woman. Yeah, there's so many incredible women. I do agree that the Secretary General currently has been such a great ally, and there's a lot of amazing work being done in that sense. But as I said before, I think there's a connection not only in terms of doing what's right and including diversity in these spaces, but a connection between more diversity, more equality with better results. And so if we need to speak, to advocates that are, or voters, whatever countries that are more worried about the economic aspect of things or the peace and security aspect, kind of adapting our language, so be it. But I think the reality is that there is a direct pipeline into having more women in power and having more environmentally friendly results, more peaceful results, more peaceful agreements. And so that cannot be forgotten. But I will say, I hope we're not disappointed either. But if it's not the case, right, if it doesn't happen, I think given, especially, I was just in DC, in Washington, DC, a few weeks ago, and given what's happening in the US and what's happening around the world, it's easy to be disappointed by people in power and a lot of choices. But at the same time, I think the work needs to continue, right? In Brazil, we've had moments like this too, where we had high expectations for someone in power, leadership, and it didn't happen. And I believe that systemic challenges need to be addressed at those levels, large public policy levels. Secretary General has a lot of power, but I hope we can continue the work and continue the momentum regardless of what happens there, because sometimes these decisions do not represent global civil society and global willingness to change things. So I hope that we can keep the work going regardless. Yeah.
Well, even if we don't achieve the targeted result, I think these are all building steps. So even the progress will teach the global community so many important lessons. Well, we'll be on top of this mission for the next year. Well, Kosi Akbar, please introduce yourself and over to you for your question or feedback.
Honestly, I'm Hoji Akbar. Honestly, it's a wonderful opportunity for me to be in the same conference with such incredible people, honestly. But I'm not gonna lie, I'm quite new into this space, even though I truly respect equality. I really believe that there should be fairness, right? But the question that first popped up to my mind a while back, like 5 minutes ago, was that is there anything active currently going on in UN that is standing for women's rights? Like that might be a little bit of a silly question, you might call it, but I was just wondering, honestly.
Renata, as you're currently in advocacy spaces, would you like to take the question?
Sure, I can start, and happy to hear Jelena as well. Is the question on what's happening at the UN for the gender equality work in that sense? Okay.
Yes.
I mean, there's so much. I used to work as a fellow at the UN Youth Office, and they have a gender equality focus, and they're focusing on all the sustainable development goals. One of the sustainable development goals, there's 17 of them. One is gender equality, right? So I'd say that global goal, which is number 5, ends up driving a lot of the work. There's a lot of events going on, a lot of sessions, a lot of interventions, and even, we were talking just now about the Secretary General. I got to write some speeches for the Deputy Secretary General and Secretary General when I was at the Youth Office that reflected climate and gender work. And, it seems maybe not silly, but, you're doing this one little thing. It's this one speech to be spoken in this 1-minute video. But I could see the impact that makes truly and how global the UN is, right? And so I would say there's that. And also, of course, there's UN Women, which is a UN agency that's doing so much work. one thing my organization is a part of is the Feminist Action for Climate Justice Coalition. There's a bunch of coalitions within UN Women now for civil society members to join on peace and security, gender-based violence, gender and education, climate justice. So there's a lot of new spaces, and I would say CSW is definitely the main space for gender conversations happening at the UN. Still not as accessible as it should be, I think, for civil society, but there's definitely more and more spaces and opportunities there. So I would definitely look for online events and things happening, especially through UN Women, but anything that involves the 2030 Agenda, Sustainable Development Goal number 5 would be great. And Jelena, I'm sure you have a lot more to say on this, but yeah.
No, you said it all, Renata. Thank you. So, of course, as there are many initiatives, there are policies. UN Women is the entity that is supposed to create that coherence of the UN in promoting gender equality. You have, of course, the CEDAW committee trying to promote gender equality. But what I want also to bring to your attention is that since 2000, the Security Council is trying to improve its and to be more coherent in promoting gender equality to eliminate it as a threat to international peace and security, right? So you have initiatives from the UN Security Council through an informal experts group on the Women, Peace and Security Agenda that is ensuring that the peace and security agenda has a gender lens and puts women at the decision. And I'll be happy to compile all of this for you guys. Cemre, just give me a couple of days and I'll compile the Women, Peace and Security Agenda initiatives for you, because I think that they might be of interest. Over to you, Cemre.
Thank you so much. That would be terrific. And Renata, if you have any reports or interesting infographics to share with the audience, I'll be happy to disseminate it in our group. Well, Jelena, Renata, if you have maybe 10 more minutes, I would really appreciate, as we have 2 more participants to join. If anyone else, please, this is the time, raise your hands. I'll take you to the floor. So let's start with Gunnar first, then Melek from Denmark. Gunnar from UK, over to you.
Hiya, my name is Jelena and I live in the UK. And my question is, people, I would say especially men, often use the words feminism, feminist in a negative sense. And I witnessed this especially on social media. So I was wondering, what can we do to change this?
Jelena, this is a hard question for you, I know.
Well, because I'm on record, I'm going to be very careful. Hatred has no place anywhere, and even less in social media, right? But that's what it is. You want to change things, monitor and sanction hatred. There's no place to call women or men who defend women's rights or any human rights, calling them bad names or threatening them or intimidating them. Right? So the solution is one-on-one prevention and accountability for hatred and for hate speeches. But you are right. I mean, unfortunately, those who promote human rights, women's rights, democracy, accountability, good governance, we are all under the radar, and not in a good way. But that was a very relevant question, unfortunately, indeed.
Renata, any reflections from the Global South, particularly, maybe?
Definitely. I think the word feminism ends up being very charged. Even in Brazil, we do work of my NGO bringing what we call gender transformative education to schools. And that's a term that goes beyond including gender equality discussions in school curriculums, but gender transformative. So we want to change the systems, change, the idea of women being bullied or harassed for being who they are, things like that. But what we do, because school curriculums in Brazil were so charged, similarly to the US, they tried to ban a lot of civil rights, human rights books from kids reaching it and from bookstores. So when we go to these schools, we work with these schools, we sometimes adjust the language. Maybe we're not bringing a feminist organization. We are, you know, a justice organization that wants equal rights for everyone, and we adapt that so that we can get into the spaces, because I believe we have to bridge those gaps, right, and get to those people that maybe think differently or think feminism is about women being better than men or being above men, which is not true. It's simply equality. So often we just adjust those languages to navigate those environments of sometimes repression, censorship, things like that, to do the work we do.
Gülnar, do you have any follow-up notes? Do you agree, disagree?
Yeah, I think that was, yeah, very clear. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us with this great, timely question. Now over to Melek from Denmark.
Hi, hello. Yes, I'm Mirik. I live in Denmark, and my question was more, so I'm also new in this big scale kind of gender equality work and all of this, but on the smaller scale in daily life and projects and work and school life and all of this, what I often think about is, if I were a man, why should I care about this? Why should I care about women's not just rights, but getting women into higher positions, because it is a very comfortable, maybe, area for men to be in right now without working for this and maybe preventing this. So I guess I don't know what the question exactly would be, but what would make sense to explain to maybe younger men who want to make a change, but also have been used to this kind of world we live in right now? Why should they work for this? How do we explain that? Should we even explain that? Is there a difference between the men working for this goal or women? I know this was kind of 50 different questions, but maybe you can answer the part you feel like the most.
Should we go ahead?
Yeah, please, please.
I mean, that's a very difficult question for sure, just because it's the general question, right? I mean, when the floods were happening, for example, last year in Brazil, some people I talked to didn't care. And it's that same thing, right? Or we see global conflicts. They're like, how do you explain to people that they should care about human rights or justice, things like that? But the issue specifically with perhaps older men in power who hold the pen on making a lot of decisions is, if you don't care about that, you are setting us up for failure, right? But so I think there's maybe an argument about pressure that way. It's similar to countries at the UN, right? Why should they adopt a resolution on something that maybe is not on their country's priorities? So there's something to be said about global cooperation. I studied international relations, so I deeply believe in that, and I believe in the power of diplomacy to do that, and global pressure too, in terms of keeping people accountable. What are the countries that are not pursuing gender equality? What are the people that are not allies in these spaces? And maybe they shouldn't be in these spaces. And so that's why civil society pressure is important in that way. I've worked at the World Bank, UN, but also in civil society. And so I've seen both sides, but I think there's an argument there to work together. And also perhaps the other arguments is gender equality in being essential to everything else, like in the 2030 agenda of the Sustainable Development Goals, how that goal relates to everything else, to quality education, to reducing poverty, how one thing depends on the other. And again, I've mentioned a few times the changing narrative thing, because I have spoken at global stages that are like the World Economic Forum, full of very rich people and global like business leaders that are only thinking about the money. So you bring that aspect too. I mean, you will also have more investments if you're bringing that gender aspect in global climate funds, for example. Some of them have started to require a gender equality assessment to give out the money, right? So having institutions as well back you up so that we can push to the side the people that do not want to be allies, do not want to help. Because come on, right? It's 2025. I think it's about time that we push off the space of people that are in power that don't care about these things, because that's setting us so much behind in terms of gender pay gap, violence. I mean, I don't know. I think this whole gender inequality conversation is much more outdated than it should be. So yeah, we need allies for sure.
Thank you so much. Jelena, anything to add?
So it's just that it is about the narrative, right? It's not only the right thing to do, the just thing to do, but it is the smart and strategic thing to do, right? And you have tons of data, but you know, we are more than half of the population. You don't need to be an economist to understand that if you don't have this more than half of your population empowered, your economy is not going to do well, right? So I totally agree with what Renata said, and in my trainings too, that there are very different targets. You need to convince men. Why do we need women in the military, right? For example. So it's all about making them understand, because nowadays it's all about what can you do for me. I disagree with this, but it's a reality. What can you do for me? Is like, well, if you have women in power position, if you have women fully, you know, their rights fully developed and promoted and respected, it will trickle down to you, to your well-being and to peace and security, right? So that's only to what that is not only the right thing to do, but it's the smart and strategic thing to do.
Thank you so much. Well, last two questions, if we can wrap them nice and short, that would be wonderful. I'll first give the floor to Thailand. Let's go there. Isara, over to you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, so my name is Isra Panthom from Thailand. I am really interested in the work of Miss Pia Comella, especially when you mentioned about your mission to eliminate all forms of discrimination against women. You have already mentioned some forms of discrimination, such as gender-based violence, but there are also some other forms of discrimination that are hidden or disguised. For example, just a few days ago, there were big news about a woman pilot in Thailand. People were quite surprised, and some of them even show a kind of distrustful opinion or doubt about her ability to, for her job. So even if she's admitted legally in her job, but society is still far from accepting others equally. So my question is that what are some forms of discrimination against women that might be hard to find or less recognizable that we should pay more attention to?
This is the question, right? Gender stereotypes. It's all these stereotypes, these misconceptions, these biases that need to be they need to be abolished, right? And the narrative needs to be changed. But you raise really the root cause of discrimination, which is these biases and these stereotypes that they come most of the time about these socially constructed gender power dynamics, right? But it's intersectional, right? These power dynamics and these biases, they go across gender, race, religion. So yeah, excellent point. So I would really invite you to follow the process of the drafting of General Recommendation 41 that specifically aims at ending gender stereotypes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Isara, for this timely and thought-provoking question. And the last round goes to Nuraisha from Cambodia. Please, over to you.
Yeah, hello, I'm Nuraisha. So this is true. So women's voice often get ignored in important decisions, whether it's in government, in the workplace, or even in their own family. So my question is, like, gender equality is not just a women issue, right? So how do we engage men as a supporters and collaborators and general partners in creating a more equal society? So how do we involve men in fight for the gender equality? That's my question.
Renata, would you like to start this time?
Sure. I think that relates also to that other question, right? And how we can make people care, right? And bring them as allies. Perhaps framing it not only as a women's issue or women's empowerment, but as a global issue, right? I think framing it as this global challenge, gender inequality, people can start to understand that it's not only something that women need to do. This happens too in my NGO because a lot of volunteers that apply are women, and then they're like, "Can men apply?" And I'm like, "Of course, we need more men for sure." But I think that involves, as Jelena was saying, the changing narrative too, and how we approach this, how we present ourselves. Of course, there's like maybe more radical feminism and things like that that are kind of shift away from that allyship. But I really do believe that we need to be diplomatic about it in order to get people to work together with us. There's campaigns like the UN Women He for She campaign. That's exactly about that. It's about bringing men's allyship into this work. There's amazing youth activists too that are in the gender equality space that are men. Like Ishan is a big one that's like super involved in it. And I think that's super just bold and important. And I hope we can get more. I don't know. I think the feminist agenda and the gender equality agenda historically has not included a lot of men, but the few ones that are included and are those people that's in the boardroom see a situation of inequality or harassment happen and can stand up for it are definitely the people that are on the right side of history in that way, as cliche as that sounds. But I think from our side, as feminist organizations, as women, young women working on this subject area, we can invite them and understand that men have to be a part of the solution as well, have to join gender equality organizations, and have to be allies in their work, bringing more women and bringing more gender equality discussions to the spaces of power that they may be able to access that we may not still. So I would say allyship is the main one, and the narrative that we bring.
Thank you, Renata. And Jelena has been providing training sessions to professionals in army and security forces in Africa, if I remember correctly. So I'm sure she's gonna have some important reflections on that too, being on the ground.
So you need men, as Renata was saying, to be part of the discussions, the solutions, the decisions. You cannot segregate gender equality as just our issue. It is a whole society issue, and it's a leadership issue. So, but you need to deconstruct again these stereotypes that men they don't care about, or there are not men enough if they care about gender equality. No, right? So you need to break these socially constructed roles of what's feminine and masculine, or that men also need to care about gender equality. So it starts here. You need to involve them in the armed and security forces. When I was accompanying, supporting one civil society organization, they asked me, my former colleagues, why don't you do the trainings yourself? It's like, why would I do? I'm a civilian. I'm a white woman. Well, I don't have any legitimacy. I don't even have any agency to do trainings on women's rights or conflict-related sexual and gender-based violence. It has to be a man, and it has to be one of these, and the higher up into the military chain. So this way, they see that it's like, oh, okay, it's not a white woman's issue. It is our issue. Right? So the same as we say, women, that we need to have agency into leadership positions and into the same issues, we need to ensure that men have agency into women's rights issues and gender equality. And it's all about reframing that it's a whole society. The whole society will benefit on this, right? The same as we say that women need to be in the situation room or running financial organizations. I sometimes I'm not very well understood or popular when I said, in feminist organizations, in the boards, we need more men. We do need more men.
Of course.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's all what I want to add for now.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Cemre.
And thank you, Nuraisha, requesting to take the floor. I appreciate your question. Well, Renata, Jelena, you've been kind to stay with us for an extended 15 minutes. I highly, highly appreciate your time with us. So I'll ask Mehmet if he has any concluding reflections, remarks, and we'll conclude the first part of today's session.
Well, I think, everything that has to be said, and I'm so happy to have Jelena and Renata to be with us, and they shared really amazing information and insights. And CEDAW committee, I shared the information, the links on the chat, so I highly recommend our youth leaders to check them. And I think this has been an inspiring, session. I thank you, both of you.
Thank you so much once again from the bottom of my heart, and I really look forward to have that coffee with Renata and Jelena coming in
Yes.
2 weeks' time. Let's make sure that we grab something together. Thank you so much, and I'll now ask the participants to remain with us for the next 10 to 15 more minutes as we have more reminders and things to share. Well, I wish you a great day, Jelena
Bye
and
bye.
Renata.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank
Thank you
you
so
so
much. It was
much.
great speaking with you all. Have a great day. Bye bye.
Delighted to have you
Bye.
both. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody. That was a fantastic session. The content is better when you're all involved, as this is the mission of this platform to make sure that you are on board with your questions, feedbacks, and take this opportunity to really practice getting engaged with expert speakers and doing networking. Both speakers are very open to be connected on social media. I would highly, highly encourage you to look for them on Renata is an Instagram person. Jelena is more active on LinkedIn. Please reach out and make sure that you have listened. You note that you participated in today's discussion. Well, for the remaining 10 to 15 minutes, Mehmet, if you don't mind, I just want to ask if our colleagues have attended any panels this month or any planning activities are coming up, and then you can take the floor for working sessions, working groups announcements. Is that fine?
Yes, I think that's great. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Well, let's get back to gallery session. Well, colleagues, as we have been sharing reminders, in order for you to receive your certificates, we have 2 mandatory to-dos ahead of you: attending 2 panel discussions, either virtual or in person, and writing a blog post. So now I would like to open the floor to ask if any of you have attended in any panel discussions, networking events, or do you have any ideas on what to write on, as we are in now the second session of the program. I think this is the time that you start planning your roadmap to complete these tasks. Anybody looking forward to take the floor to share? Okay, Yunar Gültekin, you say you have one coming up in 2 weeks. Would you like to share the title maybe? Or anything else related to that panel, or is that a networking event?
Yep. So basically, it's something that my university has arranged. It's like a panel meeting, and it's about human rights, and especially focusing on the freedom of speech on media.
Right
So
topic.
yeah, I will be attending that in 2 weeks, hopefully.
Thank you for informing us. And when you do so, that would be wonderful if you can maybe email us with the title of the event and maybe 2 paragraphs, takeaways. So we know how the event went as well. But happy to hear that you will be engaging in some moving discussions. Thank you. Anyone else? Any virtual event or any university event? Yes, please go ahead. Do I say your name right? Hozi Akbar?
It's Hoji Akbar.
Hoji Akbar.
Okay.
Okay. Hoji Akbar, please.
Honestly, because this is like this is actually my first time, and I actually haven't really done anything yet. I would have to take a really thorough look at your old messages. I'm guessing.
Sure. We are still early in the beginning of the sessions, and thank you so much for sharing this call that it's your first time. We may have other friends like you attending who missed the session 1 and now it's their first time. I've been sharing some links on the WhatsApp chat. They are now past events, but as the Commission on the Status of Women is coming up, we will have 5 different virtual sessions on women's rights and girls' empowerment. I'll be sharing those links as well coming up in 2 weeks. So please take an advantage of attending either one of those to check at least one of your event requirements. So Hoji Akbar, please stay tuned. I'll be sharing more links coming up for virtual events.
Splendid. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And Melek says she joined the youth-led Zoom event. Oh, how was that?
It was very nice. I unfortunately got my wisdom teeth removed 2 days before that, so I wasn't
Oh,
exactly mentally present as much as I would want to be, but it was very interesting and a very active kind of conversation. So it was interesting joining that type of event for the first time.
was it organized by the fellows, Global Youth Fellows of the NGO CSW?
It was, yes, this one. I think so.
Oh, yeah, I think it's the youth office event.
Yeah, exactly.
Could be,
Yes.
could be. Well, great, wonderful, thank you. Well, likewise, I would appreciate, if you can email us the event title and 2 paragraphs of takeaways so we keep it in your record to check out one of the event requirements. Thank you so much.
Thank
As
you
you
for
informed
sending the
that,
reminders in the group.
of
It's very
course,
helpful. Thank you.
my pleasure. Anyone else? Any upcoming events that you're interested or plans to join? Or maybe you know about some of the virtual events that ADVO from Romania will organize. There will be one youth event. Do you know about that?
Yes, I'm aware of it, but I don't know the details. There's another team organizing.
Leading that?
Yeah.
Right. Well, it will be organized by one of our global partners from Romania, ADVO. It's an intercultural dialogue platform, and they will convene young leaders from different parts of the world who have migrated from their homelands due to different political, cultural reasons, and young people will share their best practices on how they integrated to their new societies. So I believe it's the second week of CSW, maybe 17th of March or 18th. I'll share the link again. And that would be another good opportunity for you to observe how young people are being convened. And no, it does not have to be a UN event or panel. It can be any panel or networking event that focuses on human rights of any teams, anything that is interesting to you. But that would be great if you can align it with, with the mission of Global Youth Leadership Program. Well, I say this because it's important that you observe these platforms, as we have working groups as well. And last year it was very productive. We already had a couple events with our interfaith working group. So I'll turn to Mehmet if he's ready to share what's coming up in terms of shaping the working groups. And we'll be taking more action on that coming up.
Yes, actually, our goal in this program is to give you more opportunities so that you can achieve more from this program. So one of the ways to do this is just forming working groups based on your interest. And for this one, last year we had the working group on climate action. So this group has been very active. So we would like to encourage every one of you to become a part of one of these working groups. So the working groups are to get together among each other, because we meet once a month, and then throughout this month, let's say in March. So we would like you to just get together, meet with this working group, and see, like, what is it that you would like to do. You can organize an event, or you can organize a research project, or you can organize maybe a trip to maybe COP 30, which will be in Brazil. And for this one, we also have a mentor who has been very active in climate action. On top of that, we have a mentor from last year's the Global Youth Leadership Program. She has been very active in climate action. So if you think that climate action is something that you are really interested in, so you can become a part of the Global Action group. And then the other group is, okay, so these are last year. So the other one is Human Rights Working Group. So if you are studying political science, international relations, or any other, majors, and if you would like to, if you're passionate about human rights, so you can be a part of this working group. And we have a human rights lawyer, and we have, expertise in human rights treaty bodies, just like Jelena mentioned, CEDAW is one of them. But there are others. So this is a good opportunity to learn about human rights mechanisms at United Nations. And again, there are so many international days. We can organize events. We can participate in different events that has been going on. And another working group is Global Health Working Group. If you are studying medicine or any other related majors, so you can become a part of this working group as well. And let me continue with the other one, quality education. So this is very important, which is a part of the quality education, which is a part of the SDG number 4. So if you are passionate about education, if you want to make a difference through quality education, so this could be a working group that you may want to be in. And another one is the interfaith working group. And sometimes building peace depends on good understanding of each other on the on different on the basis of religion or belief. Sometimes people are discriminated. There are stereotypes or hatred based on religion or faith belief. So if you are interested in this, so we can organize an event. And as a matter of fact, with the Global Youth Leadership alumni from last year, we organized an event which was, interfaith, interfaith dialogue for peace and justice. So that was the project that they came up with. So we organized that event during the World Interfaith Harmony Week. I think it was 2 weeks ago. And another one is economic development. Again, if you are studying economics or any related fields, so this could be a working group that you can be a part of. All right, and okay, so these were the working groups. Now I would like to show this to you. Okay, let me just put this down. Okay, here now we have the working groups. All right, so so this is the working group. These are the working groups: climate action, and global health, human rights, and others. So what we would like to do is, so just, you can type, you can just, rename, nominate yourself as a member of any of the working groups. If you would like to take a lead person position, then you can just, nominate yourself as a member of the climate action group, and I would like to become a lead person. You can do this on our WhatsApp group. So what we do then later on, we can just put your names over here. Then the next session, we will, give you some tasks that you can do together. And so that's how we're gonna, do this. And this is also good for you in terms of building your resume. So later on, at the end of the program, you can say that I have become a lead person at the Climate Action Working Group, and we've done this and that, this and that. So that's a good opportunity for you to, build up on your resume as well. So, I mean, at this time, we don't have time to go one by one. But again, I highly, encourage you to just, choose a working group, and I will share this information on WhatsApp. Just nominate yourself as a member of the group or as a lead person for any of the action groups.
Thank you. Thank you, Mehmet. And I think going over the images to see the teams would be very helpful. So after we post these working group announcements, you can take your time to think about the teams. If you have questions, you can write that in the interactive group. We will be answering them in writing so that everybody can also see your questions and the responses we provide. And next month, please come prepared with ideas on which teams you're interested. If you have any questions to discuss in the group, let's take them, and we'll be providing you with more information on the tasks and what is expected. This is a quite fun and a light activity. I don't think it will take much of your time away from your classes, from any of the duties that you may have, either work or family related. So maybe once or twice meetups a month would be more than enough to conclude your tasks. So please don't take this as a big project. This is something that we want to make sure that you can easily and conveniently be a part of. So any questions at this moment before we wrap up the session on any item, any business item? Okay, then. So the next session will be again the last Thursday of March. We'll have again terrific speakers, I'm sure, as they are confirmed. We'll be sharing their biographies, pictures, and I'll be sharing some screenshots, in fact, in the group. So if you want to take this opportunity, you can post this in your social media accounts, tag Renata, tag Jelena. They're globally acknowledged people. So you can say, I was, for example, privileged to participate in a meeting attended by CEDAW committee member, Jelena Comella, and I asked this and that question. Or if you didn't even ask any question, you can say, one of the most important takeaways from Renata's remarks was this and that. You can tag her, you can tag NGO CSW. So please take an advantage of this platform to increase your visibility on social media platforms as well. So I'll share the screenshots with you if anybody is interested about posting this on their social media, and make sure to tag JWF as well so we get to retweet your posts. Okay. Well, thank you so much. If anything else, please do not hesitate to reach out in the group and we'll be happy to help you. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Have a great day.